بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه. This is the first class on the Sharḥ of Sullam Al Munawraq or al Munawraq. We'll discuss that, which are the two ways of saying it. في علم المنطق, either way, منورق with the فتح بدرة or مرونق with the فتح بدنون. And في علم المنطق or في علم المنطق according to the correct understanding. Um, Even though what's more popular is علم المنطق, as it comes in the Quran too. وقال يا أيها الناس علمنا منطق الطير وأوتينا من كل شيء. Over there the word منطق is used. But the qiyas in نطق ينطق, which means to speak or have the ability to speak, is منطق when it comes as a masdar that is mimi. That is, it comes on the scale of مفعل. So this is مخالف للقياس. The قياس المنطق. So is it possible that the author was looking at that? That is السلم المرونق أو المنورق في علم المنطق أو المنطق. That's a possibility. So anyways, this is the author's own commentary on it. What is the Sullam Al Munawraq and what is it al-Mantiq? We'll get into that inshallah. We'll start with the muqaddimah of the author today, as well as the main mabadi عشر for علم المنطق, for those who have not covered it. Most students of knowledge end up not covering it, so it's just appropriate that we do cover it inshallah. But at the same time, we will read a bit of the commentary too, just a bit of a background about Abd al-Rahman himself. Al-Akhḍarī was mentioned here that he passed away in 953. Al-Jazairi al-Maliki. Who is he? How much do we know about him? Etc. So, for those who do not know, he's very famous actually, and he's written multiple books too. His you know I guess he was born in a place called Bantayus, I think, in 920. That is according to the Islamic calendar, and that is kind of understood, given the fact that he has indicated this in the text itself. And when he says "wali bani" or "wali bunay," we'll discuss that too. There are two ways of doing it. "Wali bani إحدى وعشرين سنة معذرة مقبولة مستحسنة." He says for someone who is only 21 years old, there should be a lot of excuse that is accepted and given benefit of doubt or goodness attributed towards it. So what he did is he wrote a book, um, and he versified whatever could be found in the Isagogi, the Isagogue, as well as additional points that he picked from different commentaries that were written by Arab experts of logic and philosophy and argumentation, etc., all the relative sciences, and he just versified them together on the poetic meter of Rajaz, which is perhaps the most um, facilitating form of speech in both prose and poetry that the people of knowledge chose so they can. Yeah, okay. The people of knowledge chose for students of knowledge to memorize these texts. So he mentions this in that text itself, that when he finished it, and it will come to in the outro inshallah. And then he mentions his own age, that I wrote this manzuma, I wrote this text when I was 21 years old, the versification itself of this text. And then he wrote a commentary on it. This is the commentary that we'll be covering, and which is called the Sharḥ al-Nadhim sometimes, or Sharḥ al-Sullam al-Munawraq lil-Musannif, etc., or just the Sharḥ al-Sullam al-Munawraq itself, and it doesn't really have a specific title. We just know the fact that it's a thing. And the importance of ilm al-mantiq, for those who do not know, we will expand on this more inshallah, and um mabadi that we do. What is the mabadi, etc.? I'll explain that right now. Before we look at a bit of the text too. what is ilm mantiq, and in terms of other sciences, what have the scholars, the people of knowledge, said about it? Um, the author of uh, Nashr al-Bunud, who is also the author of Maraq al-Saud, that is Sayyidi Abdullah ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Hajj al-Alawi al-Shanqiti. He has mentioned the conditions for a person to reach the level of ijtihad. That is, who reaches level of ijtihad according to the mutakhirun of the people of Usul, the latter-day ones. Mutakhirun, the latter-day ones. And in that he mentions that what is required for a person of knowledge to know, like what are the different things they need to master. So, he while he starts describing like who should be like the one who is given the right of ijtihad, he mentions قد عرف التكليف بالدليل ذي العقل قبل صارف النقول. He even says that a person is someone that like a person who reaches the highest level of learning, the biggest alim, scholar, would be someone who knows the taklif through the dalil, يعني the accountability and all the legal rulings that relate to it. He understands that he is someone who knows, as he describes too, and someone who knows what comes with accountability from Allah Tabarak Ta'ala. So while he's discussing this, he says يعني أن من شروط المجتهد عفوا, that from the conditions of a person to be of the highest learning and scholarship أن يكون عارفا, that he is someone who recognizes بأنه مكلف, that he is مكلف يعني بالتمسك بالدليل العقلي, that he has to know the أدلة عقلية, the rational proofs that come. أي البراءة الأصلية إلى أن يصرف عنه أو يصرف عنه صارف يصرف عنه صارف من النقل أي الشرع. So he says he has to be someone who recognizes the adilla aqliya, and then when it comes to the sciences, that which are the sciences that need to be known, he says والنحو والميزان, يعني ويعرف النحو والميزان واللغة مع علم الأصول وبلاغة جمع, that he should be someone who should master, have malaka, have like this innate ability and mastery in the science of an-nahm, which is inclusive of tasrif too, based on one understanding that like he should be a master of the primary sciences, more importantly, Arabic syntax, grammar, and morphology. Wal-mizan, he says, and also mizan. While explaining this, he says that the person who reaches the highest level of learning, it is a requirement that is يعني أنه يشترط في المجتهد أن يكون عارفا بالنحو الشامل للتصريف وعارفا بعلم المنطق وهو المراد بالميزان. He says that for a person to be mujtahid, according to the mutakhirun, the latter-day scholars, like the person to reach the highest level of becoming alim, it is required that not only does he master an-nahm, as he mentions, and it's as a tasrif that's understood, he says also that he is arif بعلم المنطق. He should have good knowledge of علم المنطق مع علم الأصول وبلاغة جمع, and he should also know علم الأصول, and he should also know علم البلاغة, that is the science of principles of jurisprudence and theology, as well as Arabic rhetoric that comprise of the semantics and figures of speech and ornamentations of speech, etc. He should know this, and he says, and he should also know the lugha and the different types of looking at it, urfan, philology, that is, or the language in general, in terms of the conventional the forms of speech, as well as the legal or terminological forms of speech. And all of these things are required. So one of the things that he mentioned was as a requirement was ilmul mantiq. So this brought the scholars towards like learning it. That they said that, well, we're not really asked for like who founded it and where did it come from. We'll get into that when we go to the mabadi, which I will explain what it is. But we will right now it's just the fact that why do the scholars actually go towards this, because it's something that complements their knowledge or whatever path they're seeking, specifically when we're talking about the ones who keep on going for higher learning. So it's something that is pretty much a requirement for it, as I told you that he has to, as mentioned by Ibn Hajj al-Alawi rahimahullah in Maraq al-Saud, which is a famous alfiya of his on ilm al-usul, that he says that it's necessary for a person to know these sciences, and one of them is al-Mantiq, that is logic and argumentation slash you can say some sort of like philosophical elements too that are permissible in line with the Kitab and Sunnah. Now coming to al-Mabadi al-Ashr, what is it? The al-Mabadi al-Ashr are the 10 introductory points that need to be known by people if they are getting into any science they want to get into. As-Sabban has famously put them together in his Risala and the Tasmiyah, and it is also quoted in the famous commentary on Lamiyat al-Af'al, that is Fath al-Muta'al by As-Sa'idi, in which As-Sabban rahimahullah says إن مبادئ كل فن أو علم, comes both ways, كل فن عشرة الحد والموضوع ثم الثمرة أو فضل وفضله ونسبة والواضع والاسم الاستمداد وحكم الشارع مسائل والبعض بالبعض اكتفى ومن درى الجميع حاز الشرفا. He says إن مبادئ, the مبدأ, that is whenever you're trying to speak on a matter or um, delve into a science, there are 10 introductory things that you need to know. What are they? الحد والموضوع ثم الثمرة. He says there are 10, there are 10, and they have to be حد, the legal definition of it, الموضوع, the subject matter of it, الثمرة, the result of it, or the fruit, the objective, you can say, وفضله, and its virtue, what's the virtue of it, ونسبة, and its relativity between itself and the other sciences, like where does it stand among the other sciences, والواضع, and the founder, the one who laid down, or I guess laid the first brick for the science or knowledge, the what is, and the different titles of the science, al-istimdad, the different resources of the science, حكم الشارع, it says that all and the legal ruling of that, or engaging or studying that science, مسائل, and the major discussion of the science, والبعض بالبعض اكتفى ومن درى الجميع حاز الشرفا. He says that some of them can suffice. You can suffice with some of them and not know every single one of them, but whoever knows all 10 properly has a sharafa, he's the one who goes towards nobility and attains it. These are like versified for people who would want to remember them. Al-Akhḍarī and some of Hawashi is also versified them, and it's actually shorter. He says مبادئ كل علم كان حد وموضوع وغاية مستمد مسائل نسبة واسم وحكم وفضل وادع عشر تعد. He says that the مبادئ كل علم, every knowledge, every science will have مبادئ with the تخفيف of the hamza in the end. مبادئ كل علم كان حد. He says الحد, that is the definition of it. So if I were to like mention all of them according to how he's worded them, so and maybe like go from the easiest to like the more difficult ones. The first thing is the title of the science. What are the different names this science is known by? Two, the definition of that science. Like, how do you define it? How do you encapsulate it in a way? It's about, or I guess like draw the lines in a way that other sciences do not creep in, and its own discussions do not creep into the other sciences, right? Or like leak, I guess, or what I'm going to say, like get drawn to the other sciences. So you're able to differentiate and understand the conclusions more crisply. آه ده موضوع مواد كل علم كان أحده موضوع موضوع refers to the subject matter. What is used in the science to have a discussion? غاية, that is what's the objective of the science. موضوع وغاية مستمد, and مستمد, that is the استمداد, that is the resources, like what do you take help from in order to develop views or understandings in the science. مستمد مسائل, and like the major discussions of it, and the nisbah, the relativity between this science and other sciences, uh, and the hukm of it, that is what's the legal ruling related to it. Is it permissible or not? This has an entire chapter in the Sullam itself, like a short chapter of like 4 couplets, if I'm not mistaken. And the author is going to comment on it too, and the different views are going to be brought. And that has been a topic of contention for a very long time, especially those who are not big fans of logic and they think it's a waste of time. You find those views about multiple different sciences. You would see some people of fiqh, um, from an usuli perspective or a furu'i perspective, and they find it to be a lot more important, to the extent that many of the hadith studies are not that important to them, especially when it comes to the ilm riwayah world of it. A lot of them are just completely oblivious of it. Some of the linguistic or more semantical discussions that relate to the Quran, they're not that interested in that. So they would like not be, their lack of interest is displayed by their strong criticism of it. But I would say that when it comes to criticism in general, ilm al-mantiq definitely gets the most of it. But it's and after that is ilm balagha and many other sciences. But with all due respect, I just don't understand one thing, is that why, and these sciences are actually very complex. Why the ones that are the most complex are considered to be the most unnecessary. It's just like too appropriate for people to be like, well, it's not really needed and it's not important. It could actually possibly even deviate, etc. And it happens to be extremely complex, that you would see some people, if the discussions start about, the terminologies or other things. I mean, someone could argue that they never learned it, so they have this issue, but like they get stuck somewhere. As I told you, then in the Nashr al Ibn Hajj al-Alawi rahmallah says that and that's a work on usul, that for a person who becomes a mujtahid, who becomes a person who can exercise independent reasoning and reach the highest level of scholarship, it is required that he masters or knows, at least to a certain extent, to be accurate, the discussions of al-mantiq. So the legal ruling of regarding it, is it permissible? Is it recommended? Is it mandatory? Is it disliked? Is it unlawful? And we will also look at all the different adillah that are brought forth for it. Usually it's really famous that Ibn Salah and Nawawi were both of the view that you should not learn it, etc. So they say that it should not be learned. For those who are against it. So we'll analyze that too, inshallah. We'll have thoroughly go through that discussion that is much required. مسائل نسبة واسم وحكم وفضل. Fadl of it, what's the virtue of the science? Like what are the rewards they can get by engaging the science? The fadl of it, which is very different from like the hukm of it, right? And the objective of it. Objectives relate to like what you can get out of it and extract, and fadl is more like the virtue of it, like how good is it as a science in general. And wadi', that is who's the founder of the science, who's the one who laid the foundation of it, Islamically speaking. And these are considered to be the 10 introductory points. We'll get into that, inshallah. Let's look at the text itself a little before we get into the mabdas. The best way to do it, I think, is that we read through the muqaddimah of the text. That is al-Akhḍarī's text. Oh, subhanAllah, I forgot to mention about al-Akhḍarī himself, which I was commenting on. Like he's the one who's the author of this text. He's famously known as Abd al-Rahman ibn al-Saghir ibn Muhammad ibn Amir al-Akhḍarī, sometimes just known as Abd al-Rahman al-Akhḍarī too. His actual lineage goes back to Abbas ibn Mirdas, who coincidentally was a poet too. The famous couplet that are related about in praise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that يا خاتم النبأ خير المرسلين. uh, يا خاتم النبأ خير المرسلين. It's like from the qasida that begins like that. uh, and discusses the nuba'a that refers to the prophets, is something that's famous. And if I'm not mistaken, a diwan exists too, of Abbas ibn Mirdas radiallahu anh. And so his lineage went back to him, Abbas ibn Mirdas al-Sulami radiallahu anh. And he grew up in, it's mentioned that he's al-Jazairi, that he is from Algeria, and so he grew up in like in a small village in Algeria, and then he moved to a few other areas, the Wahat, as I mentioned, in Algeria itself, and that's where he mostly learned whatever he learned. When he was very young, he memorized the Holy Quran, and in his own homeland. And after that, he started studying different sciences. He was just, his father, that is Muhammad al-Saghir. He started studying with him mostly, and he covered a lot of the rational and analytical sciences. He was a master, they say, in the laws of inheritance. He was a master in logic and different sciences, poetry, Arabic prosody. He was a master in that too. Arabic rhetoric, he was a master in that as well. So he gained a lot of mastery. He's not really known to travel and study from with a lot of shuyukh, but it is related that um, that he did go all the way to like Tunis and other areas. So in West Africa, he would definitely be going around. In terms of his writings, he is known most popularly, I would say, for Sullam. This is Sullam, Sullam Al Munawraq, which is the text itself is I would say 94 abiyat, if I'm not mistaken, like with the give and take part of it. And some parts that are, are regarded that I already explained that the actual core of it is the Isagoji, but he has a lot of fawaid that he's added that are not present in Isagoji. This text uh, received a lot of different commentaries that shows how much, traction that it got. One of the famous commentaries is the two Mullawis who, comment on it. And the one that is Abdul Wahab al-Mallawi and Ahmed al-Mallawi, and Hawashi have been written on it too, on the commentary al-Mallawi. Al-Qadi Mubarak actually has a commentary on it too. For those who do not know, Al-Qadi Mubarak is also the commentator of Sullam Al So this is documented by a lot of people, but I think because I've never come across Al-Qadi Mubarak's commentary on the Sullam, that it's possible that people mistakenly thought that it's actually the commentary on Sullam Al-Murawniq, but it's actually the commentary on Sullam Al-Ulum. And the famous commentary of al-Bajuri is there too, who passed away in 1277. That's a very famous commentary as well. The author's his own commentary, that's there too. The commentary of Sa'id Qaddura, that's there too. That's very famous, who passed away in 1066. The commentary of Ali ibn Ahmed al-Adawi, who passed away in 1189. The commentary is famous too. There's another commentary of al-Mashdali, if I'm not mistaken. And a few other things that are, written on in them, which is, very famous, like the comedy. There are some Hawashi that were written too. They were commentary notes. The same as Saban, that is Muhammad ibn Ali al-Saban, the one who said إن مبادئ كل علم أو كل فن عشرة عشرة عفوا with the فتح of the sheen. He was also someone who has Hawashi on the Sullam. Ahmed al-Sa'idi, he has Hawashi and the Sullam as well. One of the famous Hawashi that are printed as إيضاح المبهم من معاني السلم is the Hawashi of Ahmed al-Damanhuri. Those are really famous. And other writings that are written on too. There's some تقريرات on it too, like lecture notes that were, put together. Sullam had a lot of works on it. And another work of his that's really famous is Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon is a work on Balagha, where he covers all three sciences, which is pretty much his versification of the Talkhis of Al-Qazwini, for those who studied Balagha that would know this. And that also got a few commentaries. He has a few other writings. He has mostly versifications. He has a rajaz that is في طبيعة الروح, which is very interesting, like the nature of the soul. He has a versification of that on rajaz. He also has the famous rajaz on السراج في علم الفلك. He also has موصل الطلاب إلى قواعد الإعراب on Arabic syntax, more particularly the science of like inflection or in declension, etc. He also has al on the praises of the Prophet ﷺ. that is about like 250 lines. He has a Zahrat al-Saniyya, which is also a poem. He has another Ta'iyya that is also in praise of the Prophet. So he mostly wrote in poetry. And he has Al-Ra'iyya as well. So the Ta'iyya and the Ra'iyya and etc. Uh, and he has a famous text on Ibadat that is very, very, very popular in West African countries. In Ibadat, that is. In this commentary, you would see that al-Akhḍarī rahimahullah, he mostly relies on the writings of al-Fiqh al-Razi, the two Razis, that is al-Qutb al-Razi, the author of تحرير القواعد المنطقية في شرح الرسالة الشمسية, and المستصفى, and منتهى السؤل والأمل في علم الأصول والجدل of Ibn al-Hajib, and al-Burhan of Imam al-Haramain. These works he relies on a lot. Coincidentally, all these people are Usulis, and the Mustasfa and the Mukhtasar, and that is known as the Muntah al-Su'li wal-Amal, happens to be these works happen to be of Usul too. So there is like a very strong connection between Ilm al-Usul and Ilm al-Mantiq, and because of the fact that a lot of the discussions of Ilm al-Usul they are based on the rational discussion that the scholars of usul and the scholars of logic have already had in the past. So when they, for example, I'll give you an example, and we will get into that too, inshallah, for those students who are curious or they want to discover more as to you know how can we apply a lot of the things that we're learning here, like in logic, particularly, like especially the parts that we'll cover. We're not even going that in depth, but we're not really starting as beginners either, because this is a commentary on the Sullam. So there has to be like some background, obviously, in mantiq. But there are some students who want to excel and they want to start with this too. They can definitely do that as well, and I'm here to help. Inshallah, any questions you have, anything that's not clear, I will be free. I'm really open to like discussions and interactively going through the text. Do not hesitate and just ask the questions, inshallah. In terms of usul and its requirement for it, so what does al-hukm al-taklifi mean? Let me give you an example of this, and this is what's really important to understand, and it relates to ilm al-mantiq too. Like, what is al-hukm? When you say that Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala passes this verdict, right? What does that mean? Well, what does that word even mean? Like, what does that mean? That Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala has passed a legal verdict. A hukm that is shar'i, how do you describe it? So Ibn al-Hajj al-Alawi rahimahullah, he describes it, and just listen to what he says about it. And a lot of it will be like, well, this sounds very philosophical and logical, but that's what it is. So when the Usuliyun they went deeper and deeper, when they engaged and delved into like the principles of jurisprudence and theology, they said that okay, let's define what a legal hukm is, a legal ruling is, when it comes from God, that is. So how do you understand the hukm of Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala? How do you understand it? So the way it's described is كلام الله المتعلق بما يصح أن يكون فعلا للمكلف من حيث إنه مكلف به. He said the kalam of Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala is the one that relates to ما يصح أن يكون فعلا, that can validly be an action للمكلف, for anyone who's accountable, من حيث إنه مكلف به, in a way that he is considered to مكلف, which is versified in مراقي السعود. وكلام ربي إن تعلق بما يصح فعلا للمكلف فعل ما من حيث إنه به مكلف فذاك بالحكم لديهم يعرف. He says that this is what's known as hukm. And what does that mean? When we say that this is the hukm shar'i, they said that will be the kalam of Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala al-muta'alliq, that has a connection, that بما يصح أن يكون فعلا للمكلف, that whatever can actually be such. So كلام ربي إن تعلق بما. So you go like, what's the kalam of Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala? What's the ta'alluq of it? What's taklif? بما يصح فعلا. What does that even mean? That something can, be such a thing. As-Suyuti rahimahullah, in his versification of in Usul, he says خطاب الله بالإنشاء اعتلق عفوا بالإنشاء اعتلق بفعل من كلف حكم فاعترف or يعترف عفوا. So he mentions this. He goes like, well, the khitab of Allah تبارك وتعالى بالإنشاء, that comes with the insha, and that relates to the one who is mukallaf. It's considered to be a hukm. So, I mean, I'm like, I paraphrase a little over there, but like the main thing is like we go like when something is permissible, something is impermissible, something is disliked. How do we understand this? How, like, well, what do you, how do we define the hukm itself, the hukm shar'i itself? How do you understand it? So, they get into that. They go like, well, the hukm shar'i needs to be defined as like a sifa of the fi'l, and etc., etc. These discussions all come back to ilm mantiq, as in like you go like, well, this the statement of Allah, how can you understand that as hukm shar'i? How do you understand that? And also the matters that relate to genuses and whatever categories that fall under it, and other discussions that come. So the kalam of Allah, the haqiqah of it, what's reality, what's metaphorical or speech, or how do you understand it, and what are its boundaries, etc. And these are like the very basic things. We will go later on, inshallah, when we do this text, we will also go into the more advanced discussions that will be that will allow us to look at propositions. So what will be the propositions? The theoretical breakdowns of it. And if I give you an example right now, I guess um, perhaps it could be understood that it's something that could be traced back to the Sunnah too, right? As let's say, let me give you an example. So if the Prophet ﷺ is related from him that he did say something that could be broken down in that manner, obviously, or his kalam could be broken down in that manner, then we can understand something from it too, right? Let's say, for example, the famous hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It says, every single one of you is considered to be a ra'i. كلكم راع. Every single one of you is considered to be, and this is what we will do the latter part of logic. It's like these are like the propositions, and the systematic breakdown of it, and how do we understand whatever from it. So كلكم راع and كلكم مسؤول. Every single one of you is considered to be a ra'i, and every single one is going to be held accountable for whoever he's watching over. Right? That's the famous hadith, right? Now the question is that how do you understand the combination of this? كلكم راع, and the other part of the hadith is, according to one riwayah, كلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. Each one of you is considered to be a ra'i, right? And every single one of you will be accountable for his ra'i, right? ألا كلكم راع كلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. You understand this? Okay, ra'iyya, this refers to whatever you're responsible for or what you're supposed to watch over. But if you were to like put this aside, let's say, because this is just something that tells you of additional benefit in relation to what the mas'uliyya is about, right? But in itself, this is the actual mas'ulun and ra'in, here the predicates, and you have the subjects. Now, there's a concept they refer to as the ashkal, like the different scenarios that are in relation to the propositions that you can come up with when you're composing them and seeing whether you can reach rational deductions through it or not. So when you were to look at a dalil, when someone brings an argument, and that's what I commented on in the beginning, that a dalil aqli needs to be understood by a person who is studying fiqh as well, because all four schools have always brought adilla aqliya, rational proofs, to assist their understanding of the maqasid, the objectives, or the framework that's in the, the framework of Sharia, like whatever is in the background, what's working in the background. How do you systematically understand and break down this legal ruling and where it comes from? With the addition of the athar, that is the related pieces of information from the Prophet ﷺ and from the Sahaba, etc. We just add them together and then reach different conclusions. So the ashkal, it has the ashkal that is the different scenarios of looking at it. They have four scenarios. They go like all the propositions are supposed to be understood systematically in these four scenarios. This is roughly the actual terminology. We're going to get into them, inshallah. Just understand them as the main two muqaddimas, the sughras and the kubras. So one of the ashkal is they teach you that in the second shakl, what they say is that, well, a word that comes twice as the mawdu'u, but not in place of the mahmul, right? And the question would be like, well, okay, so th that means that um, you know, a word can come in a way to reach a conclusion. And pay attention, please. Like, I know this might get a bit confusing, but a word can come multiple times in two different propositions, and you can reach a conclusion that is based on that. It's like, yeah, you can definitely do that. Okay, so in one of the ashkal, what happens is that uh, the had awsat, the word that is repeated, and don't be confused by the terminology. I'm just trying to show you like what are the conclusions that you can reach through these, right? And the study of the muqaddimas. Is that okay? And for those who think that maybe mantiq is not really studied in according to one school, maybe even the Hanabila, al-Qiyas, al-Ikhtirani, al-Hamli is a famous discussion that comes in many of the works of the Hanabila. And no one denies that, okay, this, al-Iqtiran al-Hamli, if you don't know what this means, how would you understand even the books of fiqh, much less the other stuff. And even in Usul, in the famous work on Ibn Hajj's Mukhtasar of Ibn Subki, he discusses this in some of the هوامش that are related. So والثاني ما كان بغير شرط ولا تقسيم وهو الاقتراني الحملي ويسمى المبتدأ فيه وهو المحكوم عليه موضوعا. So whoever's reading this text, he's supposed to know this. And what does this refer to? Among the Hanafiya, the famous فصول البدائع في وصول الشرائع أو الفنري أو الفناري, they say both, the famous text on usul. Al-Fanari or Al-Fanari, he passed away in 834. It's like something that is understood. He has a whole section on it. And he goes like, he discusses it, he goes, فمنهما ليس فيه شرط ولا تقسيم ويسمى الاقترانية الحملية ومنهما فيه أحدهما ويسمى الاقترانية الشرطية, and he breaks them down. And many people in knowledge have actually explained this, that الاقتراني الحملي or القياس الحملي الاقتراني, however you want to but these discussions can actually come in other sciences as well. So one of the forms of this qiyas is this, what we're looking at, like a legal analogy through which you would reach a conclusion. So one of the ashkal, one of the scenarios of this, don't get confused with the scenarios at all. One of the ashkal that is they call the shakl awwal and shakl thani and other different ashkal that come. The shakl thani, what happens is that or the shakl thalith عفوا, is that the mawdu' happens to be in the thing that is repeated. What's mawdu'? The mawdu' is this, the subject of it. كلكم راع كلكم مسؤول عفوا. The mawdu', right? In the shakl that is thalith عفوا, the mawdu' comes in the subject happens to be repeated. So what they do is that this is how you systematically look at it. Whatever is repeated in the two propositions and whatever is repeated, and this will be the entire premise of it, obviously, that whatever is repeated, you just omit it. Does that make sense? You just remove it. And you would understand that, okay, this is connected to this. This is one way of understanding this, because there's another way of breaking this hadith down too. كلكم راع كلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. This is one way of understanding. It's like الراعي, you would conclude from this, الراعي مسؤول. There are two ways of writing mas'ul. You can write it that way or this way. There's a debate which one's more correct. This is the conclusion you will get from the hadith itself. The hadith, you will have a new conclusion based on it. Is like, okay, then the one who is taking care, he's going to be responsible. The one who is taking care, the responsibility is his. So each one of you is the one who takes care of things. Ar-ra'i. And each one of you is mas'ul. Then we say, okay, ar-ra'i mas'ul. Now, this is the part that where it gets interesting. Can you get different conclusions from the same hadith or not? Yes. So that's one riwayah that I mentioned to, right? And what about another riwayah that says, كلكم راعي وكلكم أو وكل راع مسؤول. Like what if the narration says that كلكم راع وكل راع مسؤول عن رعيته. So let's look at it again. Actually, sorry. Let me, um, all right. So the other narration, it says this, كلكم راع and كل راع مسؤول. مسؤول. So now what happened is the thing that is repeated, because you would not look at kul here, you would actually, because in the previous one too, you were looking more towards the kum. What would happen is that the repetition over here happens to be the ra'in here, and the ra'in here was a part of kul, which happens to be the predicate in the first premise. Oh, sorry, the proposition, and happens to be the subject in the second one, right? So the conclusion will be slightly different because you will be omitting these. You have to omit these. That's the principle. We'll learn the principle inshallah as we move forward. So I say, okay, كلكم مسؤول. So this is what you take from it. Are these conclusions considered to be true or not? Yes, they are. Right? Based on two recensions of the same hadith, two riwayahs of the same hadith, you were able to reach two different conclusions. One was كلكم مسؤول, and the other one was الراعي مسؤول. Can you use these to reach other conclusions too? So what you're doing is you're analyzing the statements, and they're verified obviously because it's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the sarawat, two different riwayahs of the same hadith. Both of them are authentically established. So these conclusions are products of these understandings, right? Combining them and understanding them. These statements are also verified because of that, because this is verified and this is verified. The combination of this will require two verifications too. But is there a slight difference that you can come up with? Yes, you can. The other conclusion that was, what was it? الراعي, based on that riwayah. مسؤول. And this was كلكم مسؤول. One says كلكم مسؤول, the other one says الراعي مسؤول. They're slightly different. How are they slightly different is because of the fact that ra'i, whoever that person can be, it can be you, it can be others too. So the top one is more specific, and the bottom one is less specific, is more general. When you have a conflict between more specific and less specific in terms of certain things, how do you understand them? So you would say that, okay, a ra'i will be applicable to anyone who can be a ra'i, and here in this discussion, and kullukum, I mean, as a usul discussion, he's like, it will be applicable to every single one of you, as you are mas'ulun. You guys are accountable for whatever you take over, or you're responsible. This is a very simple example, so it doesn't really have much differences. But based on these recensions, you can actually come with different conclusions. And there are examples. Ibn Arafah and other people have shown from the Quran, and Al-Tufi and others too, where through X, through Tanaqud, through different forms of analyzing, you've actually reached conclusions that they would even use to refute deviant views, by showing that, okay, this view establishes this, but we just need to know a lot of terminologies for those, inshallah, and we'll go through the terminologies. But this is like a bit more latter time discussion of it. But these are the two conclusions, because الراعي مسؤول and كلكم مسؤول, because that anyone who's taking care of things, he's going to be accountable. all of you are accountable. So this is the crux of the message that is in that riwayah for the hadith. That could slightly be different. The one, the khitab is to the Sahaba, that all of you people are responsible. The two is more general. So if someone says, for example, that hey, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته, then narration speaks of the Sahaba. You go like, no, there's other two different riwayas. Two different conclusions can be reached to the riwayas, and for you to say that it's restricted to the Sahaba only is something that is not accepted by this conclusion. الراعي مسؤول, which is very important to understand because this is a conclusion that we reached from one of the other riwayas. But what you're saying could be in line with this riwayah, and there's no contradiction between the two because of the fact that one is more specific, the other more is more general, and both will be legal rulings that the Sahaba and those who come after them, there are the ones who take care of things, and they are all responsible for it. And this is like you go like dalil for both of them. But rationally speaking, though, if you go from another perspective, obviously you can establish other things, but there are ways to establish this as well. I hope that's clear. And let's just look at a bit of the muqaddimah, inshallah. But these are the benefits that you will get, and these are very slight ones. You can imagine that if you open this door of like interpreting it by verifying whatever has been said, like كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول is one way, one riwayah, وكلكم راع وكل راع مسؤول is another riwayah, and you would say the same meaning has been related, but there's a slight difference, even in being more general and more specific. Technically, it could be considered to be very different in terms of the legal intricate discussions that relate to them, and as well as defending the meanings of it. If someone says it's specific to the Sahabis, you would say no, one riwayah actually proves otherwise. But when you're studying these riwayahs, you just go like, well, one narration comes with different riwayahs. You don't really expound on the different ways of looking at it and the different conclusion that could be reached by analyzing it rationally. This is something that we'll learn in this, inshallah, as well as X and other things that are slightly complicated. So I don't want to have like overload of information for the first class. But the usulis, they engage in a lot. And when it comes to debating and proper valid forms of argumentation, it's definitely something that plays a very important role because you have to analyze the rationally analyze whether the proof makes sense or not. So it's not just restricted to terminology. In case someone says, well, mantiq is only supposed to be studied because you're studying the major some terminologies like the kullis and the juz'is, etc. Let me give you another example of that, of this, something where it could be helpful, but in terms of terminology, though. But in terms of terminology, there's a discussion about um, nikah, right? This relates to fiqh. There's a discussion about nikah. What is the discussion about nikah? The discussion is that um, the word nikah, what does it mean? Or nakaha, what does it mean? When it comes in the Quran and the Sunnah, what does it really mean? Does it mean that it's referring to intercourse, right? Or does it refer to um, the contract of nikah? What does it refer to? So there are multiple different views about it. Two views that have been related by Ibn Humam, rahimahullah, is that one, it's considered to be al-mushtarak, al-lafzi, and al-mushtarak al-ma'nawi. What does that mean? Well, first you'll be like, well, we don't even know what that means. Al-mushtarak means like something that has multiple meanings, but in terms of lafz and in terms of ma'na, what does that mean? So al-Akhḍarī is going to clarify this. This refers to a kulli, عفوا, and this refers to a juz'i, a universal and a particular. That's how they define it in mantiq. So what does that mean? It says if nakaha comes in the meaning of wati'a, that means to perform intercourse, and it can possibly come in the meaning of aqada, that means to have the contract of nikah, then this mushtarak lafzi requires that it's one of the meanings will be haqiqah and the other one will be majaz. Like one will be a literal meaning of it, and the other one will be the non-literal meaning of it. So the discussions will start that, okay, do you go to this meaning first when it comes in the Quran, or do you go to this meaning first when it comes in the Quran? The other way of understanding it is that it comes for both meanings equally. That will be when it is considered to be mushtarak, that is ma'nawi. Mushtarak ma'nawi means like it's a kulli, it's a universal word that would be applicable to both watiya and aqada in the same manner. To have intercourse and to have the contract in the same manner. How would that differ in terms of its application, let's say? How would be considered to be different? So let's say when the Quran when it talks about nikah in regarding a female that gets divorced, that a female, if she were to be married to a man and then she gets married to another man and then he divorces her, and then can she marry someone else or not, right? So it says in Surah Al-Baqarah, فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ, that if a man were to divorce a female, she would not be halal for that man من بعد, after that, حتى تنكح زوجا غيره, until she marries another man, until she marries another man. Now, regardless of whatever has been said, let's look at which view are we going with. If, I mean, based on the conditions for something to be understood as kulli, what are the connotations of it? What are the necessities of it, etc. Will be discussed in books of mantiq and whatever is in ilm usul about it too. So you would see that you would say, okay, anyone who's of the view of mushtarak ma'nawi, he will say that حتى تنكح زوجا غيره will be applicable both ways. So if someone says that, hey, what does it refer to? Does she have to have intercourse with the person, or does the contract suffice? So anyone who is of the view is mushtarak ma'nawi, he can actually argue, and there were from the Salaf who actually argued it too until it was invalidated, is that, well, it could just refer to aqd, and that is not a haqiqa or majaz that we're going towards. It's actually an equal meaning that can be taken in the watiyah too, and we will take one of those meanings through obviously whatever they would bring forward as a dalil. For others who thought it was mushtarak lafzi, they would say that, well, you have to go to one of these other two meanings first. And if that's not possible, that's when you go towards the other meaning. You cannot combine them both. So you say حتى تنكح زوجا غيره would be applicable to, according to the four schools, it's applicable to watiyah. They go, this is the ma'na that's taken. Some say it's through haqiqa, some say it's majaz. It's very famous that the Hanafiya, they take it haqiqatan, and Shafi'iyya and the Maliki and the Hanabila, they take it majazan, that that it's intercourse is intended until she has intercourse with a husband of hers. If someone goes like, well, isn't that self-understood? Because of the fact that majaz over there, like, sorry, the zawj over there that's mentioned already tells you that she's married to that man, right? She's already married to that man. Then what's wrong in, like, in understanding that that you would have intercourse as nikah with that man. So someone can respond to that too. Is like, yeah, but do you know that one of the categories of majaz, that is, I guess, hold on, sorry, here, one of the categories of majaz is majaz mursal. And majaz mursal, what happens is that you can refer to something um, as it was or as it would be, as it was or as it would be, not as it is. So it's possible that حتى تنكح can refer to who would become her husband later on through contract, not necessarily the one who was. What's an example of that? It comes in the Quran. That قال أحدهما إني أراني أعصر خمرا, in the story of in Surah Yusuf, one of them said that I am seeing myself in Nirani A'siru Khamra, that I'm squeezing uh, alcohol. But you don't really squeeze alcohol, you squeeze uh, what do you call it, grapes, to make alcohol out of it. But over there, the grape juice was called khamr because it would become khamr. So someone can argue that, well, that's the case. So you go like, okay, so what are the different categories of majaz? You go like, well, majaz is something that goes back to mantiq too. The balagha discussions, There are majaz that are completely dependent on the rational or the thing discussions of it. Some of the people who are, not aware of these things and they go back to like, they go like, well, it's possible to attain these pieces of information from other sciences like usul and balagha, etc. Why would we have to go towards mantiq? Well, that's the whole point. The mantiq that we're talking about is the one that assists these things, not the philosophical, um, uh, problematic discussions that were a part of Hellenistic logic and philosophy that the Greeks got into, and then it's considered to be problematic. It's all just a part of this. But just as when you're doing tafsir and when you're commenting on a hadith, you have a syntactical discussion, you have a morphological discussion, then you go back to the books of morphology, right? And you go back to the books of syntax. Similarly, whenever there is a rational discussion in a fiqh related discussion or a hadith related discussion, in order to know the principles, the prerequisites, the requirements, and the conditions, etc., you will have to go back to the logical discussions that are discussed as a science. That's what we're doing here, inshallah, and we'll discuss those things together. And subhanallah, and we will, inshallah, um if for any part that's not clear, inshallah, it will become clear. And for those things that were not clear right now, you can always ask me, obviously, any question that a student has. But just for the, for the barakah of like beginning, inshallah, may Allah put barakah in this. We'll just begin the text a little, and then all the mabadi, including the from the ism all the way till the masail, the 10 things we will do slowly in our next class while we're going through the text as well. And people can objectively ask any question about it too, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. He says, Alhamdulillah. It begins with that all praises due to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. عفوا. الذي جعل قلوب العلماء سماوات. He says, the one who has created or rendered, makes more sense here, because جعل over here is with two مفعول بهs. قلوب العلماء سماوات. This is the second مفعول به, the second direct object. So all praise is due to Allah, the one who has rendered the hearts of the people of knowledge as skies. تتجلى فيها شموس المعارف. The same skies in which radiantly are shining are those, I guess you can say stars, or literally means like suns, right? Shams. Al-Ma'arif of, well, metaphorically speaking, obviously, the sons of different ways of recognizing and understanding things. وَوَسَّعَ دَوَائِرَ أَفْهَامِهِمْ, and also all praise is due to the entity that has created vastness in the dawa'ir, in the circles of أفهامهم, or the boundaries of their understandings. Like the ulama are the ones who have like very vast boundaries of understanding. They do not have restrictive understandings. فأولجهم قباب المخدرات من عرائس المعاني واللطائف. And he's the one who أولج means like to insert something, you can say. Ilaj means like to go say قباب المخدرات, and like so he has inserted them among the domes that are hiding. You can say of purity. You can say al-mukhaddarat refers to those pious women that are covered and they would always remain inside. And they would not be going out and messing around with men, I guess. They're called the mukhaddarat, the ones who are covered. Qibab is the plural of qubbah al-qiyas, and that refers to like the domes or the canopies that would have them like be carried around. من عرائس المعاني واللطائف, from the brides of meanings and intricate meanings. So what he's saying is that Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala has given them a place in the domes of mukhaddarat. Min arais, the best of the best, the best women are the most modest ones, the ones who are covered, the ones that are, do not show their private parts and other body parts to males, and the ones that are untouched because they're brides. Al-ma'ani wal-lata'if, because a modest woman would never touch another male or except in marriage. من عرائس المعاني واللطائف, that's what he means. But like these are of meanings and intricacies, you can say. And inshallah we will continue because I have to go. we will conclude our class here. Does anyone have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
Sheikh, would you what any resources that you recommend for referring to for this work?
Well, the commentaries that I mentioned, you can go to any of those. There are a lot of contemporary commentaries on it too. And I think perhaps like the best one is الضوء المشرق. الضوء المشرق على سلم المنطق is a famous text by Sheikh Muhammad bin Mahfouz ibn al-Mukhtar Fal الشنقيطي. It's amazing. And the Hawashi on it by Sheikh Abdul Hamid al-Ansari, they're very good too. But that's only for the Sullam itself. As for the commentary in the Sullam, there's nothing. I am working on a hashi on it by just clarifying whatever needs to be clarified because I think it's one of the most straightforward, amazing commentaries on it. But there are still certain parts that require some tahrir and some clarification, as well as like some corrections too, I would say, or some expansions, like different things that are part of a commentary or commentarial notes, hawashi. I'm working on that too, and one of the intentions that I have is that when I'm covering this text, I'm also writing compound that on the side, inshallah. But other than that, you can find a lot of commentaries for the Sullam itself, but it's actually hard for you to find any work on what we're covering here, the Sharḥ of al-Sullam by the author. But the commentaries on the Sullam itself, there are many. There are a lot. The Adwa al-Mushriq is with for those who are interested. There's another text that's printed with it, but it's not really mentioned. Um, it's the work of Badi' al-Zaman al-Nursi, and that work does have strange. He's from a Turkish background. For those who know, but Zamani, he's famous. Famous. He had a lot of anomalous views, but he was definitely considered to be someone who had interesting thoughts on Islamic logic. So his Sheikh Abdul Hamid Al-Ansari, he has brought a lot of his nuqul in his hawashi, a lot of his statements in the commentary notes. Abdul Hamid Al-Ansari is known to be like a really good muhaqqiq. In my eyes, I actually like his tahqiqs a lot. So that work I think is very helpful for anyone who's studying As-Sullam itself. Other than that, I think the contemporary shuruh, the commentaries on As-Sullam, there are countless. You can just look for any Sharḥ of As-Sullam. There's so many written by scholars from Saudi, scholars from Egypt, scholars from Morocco. It's just they're countless. There are too many, and because the work is so popular and like it's probably the first primer that's studied. In riwayat too, I've not really mentioned. Inshallah, for those we give ijaza, I have also done riwayat in Sullam Al Munawraq or al Munawraq with multiple teachers. One of them being the famous Sheikh Yahya Al Ghawthani. Once I was, I've had the sharaf or uh, you know, the honor to be in his presence many times. And once when I was sitting with him, and then we were discussing what texts can be read to him. So I just asked him, he's like, "Is it true that you read a Sullam Al Murawnak to Yasin Al Fadani?" And he said yes. So I said, "Okay, then I would like to read that to you." And so I read to him. He commented on it too. Not that much because it's not his science. But he's very good in lugha and other things, and so we commented on that too. So I established that riwayat from him, and I got ijaza from him in the Sullam in terms of riwayat as well. Going back to al-Akhḍarī, that's a very unique chain from Sheikh Yahya al-Ghawthani to Yasin al-Fadani, because Yasin al-Fadani, people have narrated a lot from him, but through ijaza. But in terms of his masmu'at, some of them are like very rare. Sheikh Yahya al-Ghawthani was one of the few people who has done a lot. I've done all of al-Bukhari with Sheikh Yahya too, who has done all of it with Sheikh Yasin al-Fadani as well. Anyway, so that part, inshallah, we'll talk about too later, because I hope both things were clear. Anyway. Any other questions?
Jazakallah.
Yeah, in the first riwayah that you mentioned, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول.
Yeah.
So is it possible to say that the second مقدمة is محذوف and then كلكم مسؤول is the نتيجة?
The second natija is what? The second muqaddimah is what?
Like محذوف.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
That's
both
possible.
would be the same نتيجة?
But why would it be mahdhuf though? What's the reason for it to be mahdhuf?
Like in that case, both UIs would
The
give the same.
the shakl will be different, right?
Yeah.
The shakl has to be different. The shakl is different as in because one's shakl which one was it? The one was shakl thalith when it was like موضوع, right? In both cases. And the other one was shakl awwal, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Which do we omit? So, the second and third. Yeah. So the shakls are different. So I don't understand. Why would you want to omit something? To get the natija to be the same?
Yeah, I guess.
But there's no requirement to do that though, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that was the whole point. The two riwayas, unless there's a reason to prefer it, but there's no reason to find any hadf in it because the meaning is very clear. So كلكم راع and كل راع مسؤول. In that case, the mahmul and the موضوع in the first مقدمة, the mahmul and the second مقدمة, the موضوع, they were repeated with the had awsat, so you remove them. So you got a conclusion. And the other one was كلكم راع and كل راع عفوا the same, sorry. كلكم راع and كلكم مسؤول. That one. In that case, كلكم is repeated. So that's the موضوع and the موضوع, which would be um, the astaghfirullah, the الشكل الثاني, sorry, right? The موضوع will be removed. Astaghfirullah, what I'm saying. The موضوع is removed is الشكل الثالث, and the محمول that is removed is considered بالشكل الثاني. So one is الشكل الثاني, and the other one is when the محمول comes and the موضوع comes. So in the مقدمة that is أولى, that is the صغرى, it came in the محمول, and in the thing it came in the موضوع, this is ده الشكل الأول. نعم. So الشكل الثالث and الشكل الأول. My bad. There's no reason to omit anything because you can reach a different conclusion based on it. Hope that was clear. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we'll stop here inshallah. وجزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.